Most investors think the game in 2026 is just more and more volume, and they're completely wrong. If you're a wholesaler, flipper, or just a real estate investor in general, and you're still relying on generic lists like PropStream, or just shooting in the dark with your marketing budget, the 6, 7, and 8-figure companies that are winning right now have shifted completely over to clarity. They've completely stopped guessing where their deals are actually coming from, and they're explicitly using tools right now that are showing where they're overspending, where they could perform better, and where those really big deals are actually hiding. This is the exact framework that over 1,000 top investors are using right now, and we have dozens of case studies and hundreds of testimonials, and it is what they use every single day to secure off-market deals. And in this video, I'm going to walk you through this entire system. First, I'm going to show you market analysis and sold properties. That way you can find the best winning areas and actually validate everything so that you know the exact buy box that you should be using. Second, I'm going to show you SIFMAP, where you can actually pull distress lists or just data in general, verify any buyers to build out a buyers list, and actually run comps on that system. Third, we're going to be going over records and actually building out some marketing campaigns so you can actually squeeze the most from that data. Lastly, we're going to touch on operations and lead management. That way we have a good understanding of what's going on from a dashboard and KPIs perspective, and also how you actually manage your leads and map out the entire process. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to go over is the market finder. The market finder helps you really understand everything from a market analysis perspective. A lot of times when I see investors doing their marketing, they absolutely have no idea what's going on in their market, or they have like a general vague idea of it. And the whole point of this tool is it really validates all of the different elements of your market and where you should be focusing your efforts at the nationwide, the state, the county, the zip code, and the neighborhood level. You would do this by first hopping in. This is the nationwide view. These are all the different ways that you can actually go in and sort to see what's going on in your market. The darker it is, the higher one of these numbers are. We're going to focus primarily on investor transactions, but you can also look at homes that are sold, median sale prices, homes on market, and days on market. You can use this to get an understanding of like the supply and demand of your area, how many transactions are going to investors, or just how active your market is in general. We're going to hop into my market. That way I can show you guys all the different areas and the tools here. So first, I'm in Knoxville, Tennessee. So we're always going to click on the state that we're here first, and then go deeper into the county level. And you can see that there's always going to be a map view and then a table view of whatever you have selected. So I have investor transactions here, and I'm obviously looking at the county level, and this will always be sorted from the greatest to least as far as the investor transaction volume goes. So Shelby, Tennessee, which is Memphis, Tennessee, is always going to be the highest here. Then we go to Nashville, and then Knoxville's right here. You can always choose to actually click inside here, just like this, or you could search it up here inside of the counties tab. Now, the two big things that from this point are the zip codes and the actual neighborhoods that are tied in. If you are in a bigger market, it's usually easier to navigate this at the zip code level versus the neighborhood side. Whenever you have a mid-sized to slightly larger market, it's a little bit easier to navigate. And a good example of this, if I swap over to neighborhoods, you'll notice that there's about 121 different neighborhoods that are here. But if I swapped over to maybe Los Angeles County as an example, you can see that there are so many more. And an example of this is there's 2,495 different neighborhoods or communities within Los Angeles, which is way different than the 121 that's inside of Knox County. Hey, real quick, if you're liking this kind of content and you're just trying to get more consistent deal flow, in the description below we have something called the 5-Day Deal Flow Challenge. It is 15 hours of live content that just goes over every single part of the business that you actually need to know to get more consistent deals. And it always happens at the beginning of every single month, and it's also recorded in case you join late. And it's where we go over every part of the entire real estate business. It's from market analysis to data to marketing to sales, KPIs, operations, scaling, and just everything that you need to know to get consistent deal flow. And that at this point, we've had hundreds of people go through it. And it's the best strategies that we've seen from our over 5,000 person community and also from our own business. And literally within a week after going through the challenge, we've had people close deals from the strategies that they actually learned on this challenge. And it's only $27. There's absolutely no pressure at all. And it's down below in the description. And the reason that this is important is because you would use zip codes here because it's much easier to navigate 541 zip codes versus almost 2,500 different neighborhoods within Los Angeles. But the main thing here is it's giving you a complete rundown of your area, and that way you can actually find the top zip codes and the top neighborhoods in your area, and we can go inside of SIFMAP and sold property and actually validate a specific list or validate an area before we actually pull it in. The market's good, and that this specific list that we're actually pulling is also good. The other thing that I'll throw in here, this breaks down the monthly average of the investor transactions. The kind of magic number that I've seen here is 10 or more is usually that sweet spot. That does not mean that a market's not good because it doesn't have at least 10 here. This just means that you have to go deeper within that area to know the best zip codes or neighborhoods that are actually within it. So a good example of this that I always do is a county that's right next to Knox County that I also market in called Anderson. So whenever I hop into Anderson, you see that there's about 8 investor transactions right here. So whenever we do our marketing, in the last 6 months, these zip codes have had a good amount of density here. So we would just focus on maybe these top 4 or 5 right here, especially 37716, because there's been at least 23 investor transactions that have actually occurred here. And just to really show you before we hop into sold properties the power of the market finder, I'm going to actually show you guys the top performing neighborhood by investor transaction volume inside of Knoxville, and we'll validate the best performing list within that actual area here in a few seconds inside of the sold properties tab. So as you can see, I'm inside the neighborhoods tab now, and we have the Colonial Village, Knoxville, Tennessee as the top area, so which in the last 6 months here, there's been over 24 investor transactions that have actually happened. And if I zoom in, it is this tiny pocket right here. And if I actually remove the comparison, this tiny little pocket, basically a couple neighborhoods here or communities, if you will, this is the top performing area within here. And we want to actually pull a list and validate through sold properties which lists are the best performing ones and what types of buy box actually perform well. So what I'll do next is I'll actually just copy this here, and I'm going to hop over into sold properties. Now once we're inside of sold properties, it's the exact same structure here, and the whole point of sold properties is it shows the exact properties that just sold in general, sold to an investor, and sold that were actually inside of your account, whether that's on the CRM side or on your marketing side, because you can actually audit what was going on inside of your account. And sold properties is set up in the same way. So we have the state, the county, the zip code, and the neighborhood level, and there's also 2 additional tabs. So this will always default in the last 6 months what's actually gone on. Always do this because you have a lot more data to actually work with, and you can actually validate a lot better whenever you have a nice trend versus just 1 month at a time. Also, we have our AI data. So we have 2 types of data plans. The first one that we have is our nationwide distress data, and the second is our AI data. The AI data is our flagship data product that predicts over 50% of all investor transactions in the entire US. And you can see here for Tennessee specifically, there are just over 70,000 transactions in general. About 6,800 of those were investors, and we predicted 4,068 of them, just slightly under 60%, which is where we get the name of we predict half of all investor transactions before they actually happen on this list. The second product all is broken up into distress lists in general. And just to show you guys how powerful this can really be, remember the neighborhood that we had, Colonial Village inside of Knoxville? We're going to look that up and see how we've performed historically just in that one pocket there. So we have Tennessee selected at the state level. Then we're going to move over into Knoxville, Tennessee. And then we're going to move over in the neighborhood, and we're going to copy in that exact neighborhood that I pulled from the market finder. Once we actually click that in, you can see that we've predicted 83% of all investor transactions in that area, which has been 24 investor transactions over the last 6 months, of which 20 we actually got correct. Now, the other piece here is you actually can see all the different breakdowns of the top patterns within this area. We have the distressors, the home prices, property types, year built, everything that you want to know from a buy box perspective, and also the list that we were pulling in. The first thing that I really like to do here is hop into home price, and you can see within this particular area it's a very specific range of property values, most of which are between $215,000 and $346,000. So this basically breaks down the whole range of property values that have sold in general here. And down here, this breaks down every one of those transactions that have sold, which is the 86. Whenever we hop over to investor, this is the 24 investor transactions that occurred here in this specific neighborhood. And these are the ones that actually happened that were inside of my records already that I have missed. That way I can go back and retroactively see, did we miss them? Did we market to them? What happened? Did it fall off in the sales process? And it really helps you get better and better over time. This section here represents all the distressors that were also attached to it, so we can see most of the time it will always be larger lists, which is absentee or free and clear, etc. Or there'll be cases where we have a senior homeowner, free and clear, and a tired landlord. And the main thing we really want to focus on here is the investor transactions in general. You can see that this was a property that was actually inside of my account, and it had a senior homeowner, free and clear, and tired landlord flag attached to it. And this was a property down here that was a score of 89, and it had 4 different distress types on it. Tax delinquency, absentee, free and clear, and a vacant property. And just to show you another example of how powerful this can be, whenever you hop in here, you can see the prices that people actually paid for, assuming it's not in a non-disclosure area. And if we hop into this one here, they paid $40,000 for this property. So it was probably a really, really good deal. And it will actually open up SIFMAP whenever I'll show you guys how to actually pull this data in here in just 1 second here. And just as a quick note, I have to blur out a lot of the buyer information and things like that, who they actually sold to, just for the purposes of it being a recorded video. I can't put it out online like that. So you can see here the exact sale price and the transaction history, the mortgage history in general, any foreclosure details and things like that. And then the general property details of actually what that individual property looked like. But the really, really cool thing for this property in particular, you can actually go in and pull each of these entities that were purchased and look up the actual signing member of this particular entity. And then we want to go in and do skip tracing and actually prospect them to get them inside of our buyers list. And it's really crazy. There have been a ton of properties that I've found here that I'm like, I cannot believe they paid that price. And then I just called them and said, hey, saw you paid for this. Would you be open to getting on my buyers list? And it's a very, very easy way to build a really strong buyers list because you can see all the different purchases and things like that are coming in. But the main thing is we want to pull a list inside of Colonial Village because we know it's a top area and we know that we're performing really, really well. And we want to think about these things. I only want to pull things that are inside of the single family residence. So if I hop on down here and go down to property type, you can see that there's all these different asset classes. So if I click single family homes here, and then I'm going to add in another filter block of potentially estimated value. And the reason for estimated value here is it can really tie together that top patterns page that I was showing you guys a second ago. So let's do anywhere from 50,000 here to 450,000. And whenever we apply this filter here, it doesn't really change much, but there were some investor transactions that actually came down here. And now that we've actually validated that there are still a good amount of transactions that have actually occurred, and we predicted a lot of them, we're gonna go pull this exact area inside of SIFMAP. Okay, whenever you first open SIFMAP, the whole point of this is you can run comps, you can verify the buyers like I just showed you guys in sold properties, but the main thing is we're actually finding the best list to pull in. That way we can actually start some marketing campaigns. And remember, there are two kind of paths here. We have our base data, we have our distressed data, and then we also have our AI data all tied into this one platform. So the things that we really want to focus on today are just our stacked distressed data and also the AI data in general. So whenever we hop in here, we can actually select the county first. So we're always going to go back to Knox County. There are 206,000 properties here, just a little bit above. And the next thing that we're going to do is actually put on the AI score filter, assuming that you have AI data. We always want to target 50 to 100 here, and the reason for that is we already validated that inside of the sold property side. We're going to hit apply. We're going to watch this 206,000 drop a ton, all the way down to 47,000 properties. And now we want to think about the property types itself. Remember that we just focus on single family homes here. And in my business, these are the only types of properties we actually buy. That 47,000 went down to 27,258. Then we're going to go over into the price range here, and we're going to put 50,000 to about 450,000. You're going to watch that 27,000 go down a ton again, down to 24,000. And this is when the real magic happens. Because if you wanted to broadly reach out to all these people inside of Knox County, this would be the list that you'd start with. But we're trying to go much deeper and be much more efficient with our marketing dollars and just focus on the top areas first and then go down to the next. So we're going to go down into more filters, and then we're going to go down to advanced geography and actually put in the neighborhood at Colonial Village that we've been looking at this whole time. You can see here that this is included, and we have to make sure that this is actually applied here. And then once we hit this, you're going to see it drop dramatically, all the way down to 468 properties. And to briefly show you guys how powerful this is, inside of Colonial Village here, there were 13 investor transactions that actually happened, and we predicted 11 of them, which is about 85%, on a list of 468 properties here that had a property value of 50 to 450,000, was just single family residences, and also had an AI score of 50 to 100. So what we would do here is take all of these properties right here. We're going to select all 468 of them, and then we're going to push them inside of our records account and actually start the marketing process to them, because we know I'll happily market to 468 people to get in front of 11 deals over a 6-month period. And the way that you would do this is you select all 468 of them here, and then you add them to records right here. It's always going to ask you what list this actually is and what tags they are. A list just basically means, like, are you targeting a specific list, like a foreclosure, probates, maybe stacked list? Whereas tags break down the 4 Ws of data, so think about where it's at, when it was pulled, things of that nature. So in this example, I'm going to select AI data, and then I'm going to say something along the lines of top neighborhood farm, because I'm farming the best neighborhood here. Knox County, hit enter. You can see it's applied there, and so is the AI tag. And then whenever this is added to the properties, it's always going to say it's processing this. And whenever we hop over to this page, we can see that the 468 properties are actually 100% processed. We can see the breakdown of these were the amount of properties that were new records versus updated versus duplicates or not uploaded in general. Obviously, there were zeros here because it came straight from SIFMAP. Now that we've seen that, I'm going to show you guys one more cool example from SIFMAP. Okay, so to show you exactly how powerful this can really be, if you want to go even deeper than this or even more narrow, if you will. So whenever you hop back over into advanced filters and back in sold properties, you can see here I still have everything selected, so Colonial Village, Knoxville, Tennessee, and then we look into the filtering by the single family homes and by tax limit properties with no AI score. So this is to show you what stack data or just distress list targeting would look like inside a SIFMAP. So in this given period, there were only 3 investor transactions that actually occurred here, 8 total, but 2 of them were on the list that we would have provided to you. So you can see here, if you're not using the AI score in general and just using a specific list type, this is just tax delinquency. And there were 3 investor transactions that occurred that were actually on that list here. So if we hop over back into SIFMAP, I have just single family homes selected. Inside of AI scores, I have nothing selected. And here I also have SIFMAP Pro turned on, where I can actually look at the property types and then just that specific neighborhood that I've been showing you guys the whole time. So what I'm trying to illustrate here is from these 156 properties, there were 3 investor transactions that will come from this based off historical data, meaning every 50 properties that you reach out to is going to be a deal based off all the historical data that we actually have access to. So you can actually validate how good a list actually is and how good a buy box is or an area before you actually do your marketing to it and actually load it into the records page. Okay, so the last thing I want to show you guys is actually how to run comps inside of SIFMAP. So this is from that exact list that I just pulled on the tax delinquency inside of Colonial Village. So if we go in, we want to see just this individual property right here inside of SIFMAP. You can imagine this is a property we actually want to comp out because hopefully we're going to get a really good transaction from this top neighborhood on a really good list. So we'll just type it in. And you can see it is right here. So the next thing I'm going to do is open up SIFMAP on another tab just like this. And one of the ways that you can do this is actually just putting in the neighborhood right here, Colonial Village, or you can actually just hop in and actually draw inside of a polygon here, just the same way you would if you're actually doing comps on the MLS or on Zillow. And the way that you would do that is if we notice here on this property, it's just below this main highway. So we always want to stay on the right side of this main highway. And it looks like everything else seems to be pretty standard as far as this particular area goes. So what we're going to do is actually draw this polygon. Okay, so you guys are going to see my perfect drawing skills. The first thing I'll do is just click right along the path of each of these areas that you actually want to be in. And you can see here, this will bring in only properties that fit this exact criteria. So the way that we're going to actually break this down is we want to first make sure that the bed bath count is as close as possible to as close to the property that we're actually comping as we possibly can. So whenever we hop over into SIFMAP, we're going to do bed baths, and we want basically a 2 and a 2 here. And then we always want a 1 and 1 here if we possibly can that's in this area. And that should bring us down to just this single property here. And if we crack this open, it looks like this property is sold for $289,000. We do not have photos inside of SIFMAP yet, but that is something that's coming soon. So what we like to do here, once we've found this exact property, is we'll hop over inside of Zillow, and I usually like to see what kind of photos we're actually working with. One other element here is it looks like this was not a cash sale, so it was sold on the retail side, but it was purchased by a properties LLC or an entity name here, so we know that this was an investor that probably flipped this, and I can validate that by actually looking here on this individual photo breakdown, and this is definitely a flip. I can already tell by the siding, once you've been doing this a long time. This looks like just like a clean renovation, maybe not like a full renovation, but a cosmetic flip, I would say. But it's definitely a flip, and you can actually tell just by the standard white cabinets usually. But the big thing here that I already noticed is that this is actually a 2-bath. So it looks like just based on the comps and after reading this description here, they might have actually added in the bathroom there. So with that property selling at $289, it did sell really fast, and it was a 2.2. Our property is about 500 square feet larger, and I know that because I see the 500 square feet here, but ours is a 2.1, and it's really comparable. It looks like it looks like ours is brick and theirs was just vinyl siding, so it's probably somewhere in that 280, 270 range, which is actually really close to the property value that we have. And if I were to take this down myself, I would probably take conservatively maybe 275 as the ARV, do the minus 70% on repairs. So if we take 270 with the 70% ARV on that, get 189,000 minus repairs, call it 30,000 because it's pretty small. That gives us about 159,000, just to kind of give you guys a rough example of how you would actually comp properties inside of SIFMAP. Okay, so we're inside of records. This is where all the magic happens from the marketing side. So the first thing that I'm going to show you guys is on the right side here. This is filter records. You can just come up to filters and filter by anything that you want. So for our example that we did earlier, and say we wanted to do the top neighborhood. So if we click into the add new filter block and we just select lists here, we want to make sure this says any list or, and the list type that we actually created earlier was top neighborhood farm Knox County, because we created it whenever we pulled it inside of SIFMAP. We hit apply filters here, and this is the exact list of properties that we pulled in directly from SIFMAP that's in this top specific area that's actually categorized by the top list as well, which would be the AI data in general. Also inside of records, you can actually skip trace any amount of records. So if you go to, you can hit send to skip trace. I won't go through this whole process, but you just hit agree with the terms and it'll skip trace all the data and send it right back. So say we wanted to do marketing to this, there's a ton of different ways that we could do it. We could select this entire list and we could actually send it directly into direct mail right now. We could send it to our integrations to maybe a dialer. And this could be anything from smartphone to ready mode. You can send it for text blasting inside of Smarter Contact, maybe call tools. And to give you a brief example of one of my very specific flows that I do. So if I hop into ready to call, these are all the new records that are actually inside of my account as of today. And I always want to target tax delinquency, pre-foreclosures, probate, tax sale, foreclosures, and explicitly my courthouse data. Any statuses here, and just to talk about statuses really briefly, there's something called property statuses and there's something called phone statuses. We briefly touched on phone statuses a few minutes ago, but it's basically breaking down, is it a wrong number? Is it a DNC? Exactly what is the next step or the next action that last happened on that individual phone record. And then whereas property status can be like, maybe this is a sold property or a listed property or a hot lead or a dead lead. It's everything that has to do with the individual property status, whereas the phone is more on the marketing side and the status can be on the lead management side or just generally where that property's at. So for this example, on my first kind of step in my marketing process, everything that's ready to call here has not had any call attempts to it. It does have phone numbers and it has been skip traced, so it's ready for my marketing efforts to go through. So if I hit apply here, there's not going to be that many records because it's just from one day and there's about 279. So we would take these 279 and we'd send them off to my team. I use a full internal team for my calling and all that good stuff. So they would go through and they would actually make all the dials. If I wanted to do that, I would go to send to, send it integrations, and I would make sure I'm managing it to actually change all the updated attempts to one call because I'm sending it out for calling first. And that's the entire marketing process at a very high level. And one last thing that I'm going to give you guys is a quick bonus tip. This is actually how this tool was actually founded originally, and it was one of the original use cases that generated over 7 figures just on this one list and this one strategy I'm about to take you guys through. So what Tyler used to do, he's one of the co-founders here at DataSift, is he would hop in and he would go to the owner records tab. And what owner records does is, I can't show this individual name, but this person owns 117 properties because you can look at anything on the records page and see that it is a property records page and it is a owner page. The property records just breaks down every individual property. A owner record though breaks down the entire portfolio of that individual. So imagine instead of marketing to one individual property, maybe you market to this individual that has 117, 82, or 74 properties and say, hey so-and-so, saw you own X amount of properties. Maybe it could be a little bit more. These are just the ones that I could find. I would love to give you an offer on your whole portfolio if you're interested in selling. Just something like that could go a really long way, and it's a very unique strategy that you couldn't do otherwise. And inside of it, if you just click into it, it actually shows you all the different properties, and you can send out different types of mailers to them. There's different strategies that you can do to actually target portfolios instead of just single off properties like that. Now we're going to move more into the operations and lead management side of things. So this is the dashboards tab. This breaks down all the high level 10,000 foot view, everything that's going on in the business right now, like the amount of records, the amount of new records that you have, the total amount of owners uniquely that are there, owners of multiple properties like I just showed you guys a few minutes ago, the types of lists that we actually have attached here. And the big thing too, this is just a default account, but this breaks down the amount of dials that your team is doing every day, the call duration of how much time they're actually doing their calls, the amount of appointments and outcomes that are actually associated, which we're going to talk about here in just a second, and the appointments by user. The entire goal of our platform is we're trying to integrate with as many people as possible because we don't ever want to box you into having to use like one specific dialer or one specific tool that's maybe our own. So we integrate with all these different tools and these integration partners. And just to show you how many there actually are, we have all these different providers here. We also have Zapier. So if there's a one-off case that's not on here, you can use Zapier and make pretty much anything happen from a CRM or integration perspective. And depending what you actually integrate is what actually appears down here in your dials and your call durations and things like that. So say you do smartphone, which is the most common for the actual phone systems for your acquisitions team. All these dials will be fed in here and the same for all the other multi-line dialers. Then we hop over into events. Events are broken down into tasks, appointments, and just completions. And there's also something called presets. So what presets is, this is the setup version of all the different things that actually happen. So there's always going to be people that are ghosting you and ghosting leads. There's always going to be people that we're trying to make offers to, always offer follow-ups, or maybe even we're sending back to our lead manager because our closer couldn't get a hold of them and they ghosted them, so we ship it back just on the acquisition side. And then we get into lead management. Think about follow-up managers, things like that are actually qualifying your leads. Maybe they have to call a new lead, or maybe they have to call a follow-up, or maybe they have a really hot one they're trying to get to. And then we get into the transactions and the actual flipping side of like closing out a deal, setting up the seller with title, etc. And the point of this is this breaks down all the different ways that from out of the box that you can actually have events. And really, events are just a way to standardize the tasks and the appointments or the events that are happening inside the business. That way we're staying organized and we can really reverse engineer the KPIs that are going to go into that dashboard so you can make sure you're running a really high quality business. And just to kind of give you an example of what this actually looks like, this is obviously the task name of a hot follow-up. We're assigning it to the role of a sensei. Think about the sensei as a lead manager or a closer or something like that. And this can be round robin off to a specific user or just that role in general. This is always going to have an active deadline. And in this case, the way that we manage our leads, which we're going to get into in just a sec, is every 1 to 2 days, we always want to follow up with our hot leads. Every 15 days, we always want to follow up with our warm leads. And every 45 days, we always want to follow up with our cold leads. And this is totally customizable to however you want to actually manage this process. But what this will do is create a task that's going to go into your Google Calendar integration for your lead manager or your follow-up specialist or your follow-up manager, whomever. That way they have to follow up with this hot lead just to make sure that it doesn't get missed, and it's going to be added in. And to drill in a little bit deeper inside of events, we have something called sequences. The best way to think about sequences is like Zapier. It has these kind of custom automations that you can set up. And again, these are our default account setups. So we have acquisitions, deep prospecting, default, lead management, and transactions in general. And the whole point of there has to be a trigger or something that happens. And if this happens, then this is going to be the next step of that. So this is an example of a very simple one. So this is an offer follow-up loop. So there's always going to be a trigger and a condition and an action. And this is just something that's already set up for you, but it really gets the brain going as far as all the different possibilities that can actually occur. So an example of the trigger here is if you actually have a follow-up lost lead that is completed, and the task here was an offer follow-up, then it's going to create a new task for your lead manager or your sensei to assign that task to a specific property. That way you actually have to follow up with that person again. So just to give you guys a very specific example of this, say this was a warm lead and we were talking to them and it was a good lead in general, and then that ended up becoming a lost deal. That is now going to change inside the status because I moved this from one phase to another because of sequences. And it's going to say lost deal, and that status is actually going to change individually to a dead lead. And this is all set up inside of the automations and the sequences side of things. There's a ton of different options with sequences, but all the ones that you're going to get are right out of the box, and you don't have to do anything to actually have a fully functioning business. And it's just one of those that as a weird circumstance comes up, you're able to actually change it and adjust it. And we have a ton of help articles and support in general that can actually help you do that. And the next kind of step from sequences is actually going in the drip campaigns. And if you guys don't know what a drip campaign is, a drip campaign just has the same thing, like a trigger or an event. And the best way that these are typically used is someone comes in as a new lead. As an example, it's going to fire off a text to them saying like, hey, so-and-so, my name's Ty. I'm going to be reaching out to you on this number here. So just make sure you save it, and I'll be calling you in 5 minutes. So an example of this would be like, we're going to send out an SMS. This is going to be broken up into the integration number that you actually have. So like smartphone would be the most common here. We always want to be sending this to the primary phone number of the actual lead that comes in. And there's a bunch of different ways where it could say owner, you basically type in the @ symbol and it's going to be breaking down all these different things on like a custom spin token here. So it would be something along the lines of, so it would be something like this. Hey, owner's first name. I'll be calling you in 5 minutes at da-da-da. And this would exactly happen with something like a call a new lead. So it would be assigned to the sensei, and this exact SMS campaign is going to go back out and just ping them saying, hey, this person is going to call you in just a second, and it just warms them up a little bit. The other most common strategy that I've seen from drip campaigns is having a specific campaign for people that have ghosted you, just to make sure you're top of mind every week or so. And the last thing that we're going to focus on today is all about lead management. So lead management, it has everything to do with, we want to manage our leads the best way possible. That's typically done by a lead manager or someone actually qualifying your leads and then moved over to a closer. And there are two different ways you can do this. One is in the records side of the page, which we're here right now. And then the other one is inside of Sift like I was showing you guys earlier. Most people prefer to do records here because it's a little bit easier to actually manage and get a little more granular. So if you come over to the right side and click on filter records here, hit load, and then move on down inside of the lead management tab, these are all the different stages that are actually hit. So call new leads, unqualified lead tasks, qualified, leads missing tasks, send back to lead management, etc. So if we call new leads and hit apply filters, there shouldn't be any leads here because this is a staging account, but the point is, depending on what your role in the business actually is, you can pin all of these different tasks up here. So maybe I'm a lead manager for a business, and if I click on overdue tasks here, this is going to show you all the different leads that are actually associated with that. So I need to go back through. So this would be a cold lead that I maybe forgot to follow up with. I'm going to hop into it. I'm going to make the actual calls because we have a phone number that's actually correct in the right step. And I'm going to call from this phone number down here that's linked inside a smartphone and actually go through that lead process. And all these different things from events and drip campaigns and sequences, that they all spin together to actually make a clean lead management process that's mostly automated. The other way that you can do it is inside of SIFMAP. So SIFMAP can be broken down into a visual Kanban board, which is probably the preferred way by a lot of people as well, just because it's a little bit easy on the eyes and you can kind of see your entire pipeline visualized just like this. So say that we're on the acquisitions board and we have a property that we're going to make an offer on. So we hop in here and we're going to call this person who owns 1390 Joyce Avenue, and we're going to go through this process, and this actually shows you all of the activity that's associated with this property, all the tags that are broken down here, and all the lists as well. And what makes this so powerful is it breaks down essentially the entire marketing side and how it connected into the sales side, which you really couldn't see any other way. And a lot of the ways that we see real estate investors struggle with is they don't have any cohesion or any connections from the marketing side to the sales side. And we're really one of the only platforms where you can do market analysis, pull in that data, add it into the records to actually do your marketing campaigns, and then whenever you get a seller that raises their hand, you can see the entire process of the sales side as well. And it all integrates with all the tools that actually fit your business. And this is where it all comes together and actually shows you the entire life cycle of this individual lead. You can go through, change the status and things like that for maybe a hot lead to, I called them and they didn't answer and they're now a ghosting lead. And because of sequences and events, this is going to move them from a hot lead to a ghosting lead and send it back to your lead management side, depending on however you want to set up your business. And the world's really your oyster and however you want to manage this lead process in general. We always are going to give you the default account that gives you the baseline to get started and just get some early traction. And then you're going to figure out things that you love and that you don't love, and that you can change all these things, and it's very customizable. All right, so just to recap, we went over first the market analysis, just to understand the best areas that we're actually marketing in. Second, we went over the sold properties tab that really shows you everything that's going on inside of your market, so you can actually validate what you're going to be pulling from a list perspective and just making sure that you're auditing your marketing flows in general. Then we moved into SIFMAP, where you can actually pull all your data in. You can run comps. You can tie together a bunch of buyers and actually build out your buyers list and really just tie together all the data side. Then we talked about building out our marketing campaigns inside of records, where all of our data actually goes in. We're managing that entire process and really refining and building out our marketing flows. That way we're squeezing the most out of we possibly can from every list that we actually upload into the system. And lastly, we went over a little bit of operations and lead management, just going over KPIs, automations that you can run, and just generally how you would map out and manage your entire process for your leads. And if you love content like this and all the strategies and everything that we go over that real estate investors love to use, we make videos every single week that are just like this, that are explicitly designed to help you dominate your market and get the most success from the entire business.